A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of romanticizing the past and choosing the future. With the weight of his life and his works on his shoulders, one of Japan's most prolific authors decides to take drastic and dramatic measures in securing what he wants and what he believes his nation needs, no matter what price must be paid. Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, contains depictions of sex and suicide and may not be suitable for all audiences. Please proceed according to your needs and comfort. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The views expressed therein are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers.
Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marchioni. Joining me today, Jasmine Garcia.
You know what? I had a musical reference for this, but you know what? I don't want to make us cringe that early on in the episode. You'll see later. Just you wait.
Shamila Karanakran.
If I had a nickel for every Japanese period piece that was a Japanese and American collaboration released in the 80s, I'd have just the one nickel because thank God it's not another Bushido blade.
And Grady Smithy.
Hi, and I find it somehow really appropriate that on Mother's Day we're recording a podcast about the story of a man who had horrible relations with every maternal figure in his life.
I think kind of horrible relations with every woman in his life. And this guy, we are here to talk about Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, which is a Lucasfilm co-production. So for some reason, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola got this pitch from Paul Schrader about, hey, I want to make a biopic about the Japanese writer Yukio Mishima. And they were like, sure. And here we are.
I wasn't aware that Mishima was actually like a real life figure. Like, did anyone like hear about him before this?
No, I had never heard about him before this.
Like, I've heard about him in passing in, like, several, like, literature classes I've done before, but I've never really gone in depth because he is a very controversial figure in Japan.
Yeah. Rightfully
That's
so.
it mildly.
Like I literally said in my Letterboxd review, so I'm a typical dumb American and didn't know who this guy was until I was about to watch this movie. But I gotta say, for me anyway, this movie was a fascinating way to do the old nugget of the biopic of the writer that incorporates his work into it. Like, I think is arguably the best example of that very niche subgenre for me.
So I will have mentioned this in the opening crawl as well, but there's going to be a lot of talk about suicide in this episode. So if that's going to be triggering for you in any way, like, you can stop the podcast here. None of us are going to judge you at all.
Yeah, speak now, forever hold your Reese's Pieces, gang, because this is heavy.
Okay, so do we want to talk about, like, the framing device of all this sort? Because this is a movie where it's, like, there is the main story, and then there's flashbacks, but then there's also incorporations of 3 of Mishima's stories.
Well, technically 4, because it also has bits of his autobiography, Confessions of a Mask.
True. But then again, this is also kind of a biography anyway, so it would be almost weird if they didn't incorporate that.
Yeah, and the framing, like, real-life event that this is framing is Mishima's attempted coup d'etat in the 1970s. So he basically went to a Japanese military base, took the general hostage, and made a big speech about trying to restore Japan back to its, like, pure roots and back to when the emperor was.
Make Japan great again, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God.
I was going to go
Shami.
I think all of us, to some level, probably went there. Like, I kept thinking, like, okay, so is this, like, if Mark Twain were also doing January 6th?
Like, he's basically on the same level as Shinzo Abe, so...
Oh boy, oh boy, boy, oh boy.
Yeah. So, in addition to the coup d'etat, it also features segments from Mishima's novels The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, Kyoko's House, and Runaway Horses. But, fun fact, the use of one other novel, Forbidden Colors, which describes the marriage of a gay man to a woman, was denied by Mishima's widow because Schrader wanted to visualize a book illustrating Mishima's narcissism and sexual ambiguity. He decided to choose Kyoko's House, which he had translated exclusively for him.
Man.
On one level, this guy lived a wild fucking life, and that is, like, really interesting. But it's also, like, when you give somebody a biopic, you're lending them a certain level of importance. Like, you're reinforcing that they matter in some way. And there's always going to be that tightrope to walk about, are you glorifying them? Are you criticizing them? Like, that's a big point of contention. Basically, anytime somebody makes a World War II movie or like a Civil War movie, and like, are we doing some Lost Cause bullshit? Like, Grady, I know you're from Texas, but you know.
Oh, I know. Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like this movie did a good job walking that tightrope, though. Like, yes, we're seeing things from his point of view, and we could see at least part of where he's coming from, but also this movie does not shy away from the fact, yeah, no, this guy sucked. It was kind of laughable in spite of his attempts at reaching this glorious warrior thing that he's been dreaming about since he was young. And it's just, ultimately, I think this really paints the portrait of just what a very disturbed and sad person he was.
My God, he wrote a play called My Friend Hitler.
I forgot he did that.
Of course he did. Yeah, no, man was prolific. Like,
No. I gotta say, when you look at so many of Schrader's other movies, Paul Schrader was the one who wrote the screenplay
Did
for
Taxi Driver, yeah.
Yeah, and not just Taxi Driver, American Gigolo, Bringing Out the Dead, Mosquito Coast. This is a man who is fascinated with people who serve as a symbol of, something that catches the public attention, the disaffected, the weird ones who never quite fit in, and also, as a prolific writer, he's got to be fascinated by the idea of a writer whose vision became as much of a thing as Mishima's fascists' ambitions for Japan became.
Yeah.
That sentence kind of got away from me.
No, it's cool. I think you might be the only person here who's really familiar with Paul Schrader's filmography. I mean, at least I'm not.
I only just know the one, Taxi Driver, and that was quite an experience. I was probably younger than I should have been when I watched it.
Is that the one where Jodie Foster was playing?
Yes.
Oh, so you don't even know Taxi Driver?
I know Taxi Driver because
okay.
I did Assassins, and John Hinckley Jr. and Squeaky Fromm sing this unbelievably beautiful love duet, and then you have to remember they're singing to Jodie Foster and Charles Manson.
Yep.
Yeah, it's messed up.
Actually, Shami, you're familiar, at least by name, with one of his other, even more controversial projects. It's a little movie that he wrote that came out a few years later called The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, yeah! I forgot he did that!
He also did the Cat People remake with the incest. So, you're 100% right, Grady.
I find the Scorsese one particularly fascinating, considering that these are almost bookends with each other, where it's people who are struggling with a desire to become the Messiah. I don't know if that's the best way of phrasing it, but messianic figures.
Yeah.
Mishima, the would-be messianic figure. Jesus, the actual according to...
Okay, hang on. Grady, I'm sorry, I need to correct you just a little bit. He did Last Temptation of Christ, not Passion of the Christ. We do not have to associate him with Mel Gibson.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
no, sorry. I apologize. If I said Passion, I apologize. I meant Last Temptation, the Scorsese one. Willem Dafoe as Jesus.
You know, I'm something of a messiah myself.
We have two people that are there in two different eras to try and redeem their world of it being a lost and fallen place, and whose deaths involve being stabbed in the guts.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Like, where do you go
like
from
the
here?
movie,
Do
that's
we
a
want to,
lot.
like, talk about, like, the different chapters?
Yeah, I think that's the best way of doing it. But I gotta admit, Shami, when you had said, yeah, this is a whole lot to unpack and it's very confusing, and I was just like, okay, mentally preparing myself, but I ended up not being all that confused. I know that sounds really full of myself, but no, I was kind of absolutely, like, it's a weird movie, for sure, but I got exactly what it was trying to do, even as I had only really learned about Mishima's whole endgame, his whole deal, like 3/4 of the way through, and I was just like, oh, that's where we're going. Okay, wow. And maybe that's part of why, because I was so ignorant about who this guy was at first, so I was just kind of along for the ride, and just, okay, this is a really cool way of taking the man's work and, paralleling it with his own psychology throughout his life. Like, it's kind of an autopsy of how a man this prolific and this talented, clearly, if his work is this well remembered in spite of everything. Like, think of it as an autopsy of how did he wind up being such a controversial figure that people are kind of hesitant to admit they love his work now. And ultimately, I see it. This is a goddamn tragedy because his own insecurities and baggage turned him into kind of a monster, and not even an effective monster.
So, like, you mentioned that, and I want to, like, skip to the ending, because the ending is its own wackadoodle thing. But yeah, I do think we have to, like, actually talk about, the stories and stuff, because they are all kind of, like, focusing on the same basic theme of somebody self-destructing because of the ways of the past are no longer in the present. I mean, like, the last one, the runaway horses, that's basically like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Yep. And in each case, it's a theme of what do we do in our pursuit of beauty, and what happens when we can't achieve the beauty that we want.
Yeah, a lot of his work is about the unity of beauty and eroticism and death. And I think he spent his whole life trying to pursue that.
Yeah, he romanticizes the warrior's death, even though in his early days of trying to be in the army during World War II, he feels like he chickened out instead of just like, no, self-preservation is good, actually. But he never got over the idea of dying a glorious death. And there's even this whole bit about how he was saying how most soldiers in the past died so young, heaven must have been beautiful, and now it's less so because people die in war less young. Oh no, I guess.
He didn't want to be alive, but he was afraid to die.
Like, yeah, for as much as he was about death, I think he was more afraid of decaying, because he said, like, with the whole thing with bodybuilding and, like, his insecurities about being flabby, like in that scene in the gay bar, like, he couldn't even look at himself in the mirror because all he saw was
his flaws.
Yeah. So why don't we start with the Temple of the Golden Pavilion? Does anybody have meaningful thoughts about this? Because the main note I wrote on that was, is he trying to use the Force on her boobs? Which I know was very, very mean, because, clearly he has anxiety, and there's the whole ableism of this thing with him having a stutter, but, like, I'm sorry, that's the Force hand pose to me. Star Wars has rotted my brain.
God damn it. I mean, that's why we're here.
He's trying to do what is expected of him, but he just can't quite manage to do it because he isn't drawn to her the way that he's drawn to the pavilion, honestly.
Yeah, and also again, like, just the internalized self-loathing is definitely a continuous theme with all these stories, but especially this one. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Star Wars parallels, because that's what I was thinking with the last story, but we'll get to that.
Like, but I also saw with his not being able to touch it, I thought maybe it was a bit of like a compulsory heterosexuality thing, because, well, Mishima, well, Yeah, he essentially was a closeted gay man, and well, just him being portrayed as a gay man, like Mishima's family and his estate, they wanted the directors to cut the gay bar scene altogether, and then even Mishima's widow went as far as to pressure the Japanese financiers to pull out the last second, and threatened to sue the producers if she was portrayed in any way in the film. So that's why Mishima's wife is never actually seen or named.
That makes sense, unfortunately.
Yeah. This is part of the reason why the film never got released in Japan in the first place. It's because, not only because of the boycott, but because of threats by right-wing groups that opposed to Mishima being portrayed as a gay man.
Even though that's what he was, yeah.
He was, after all, the Andrew Tate of his day.
I think that sometimes, like, the way that American culture perceives Japanese culture, you'd think that Japan is nothing but twinks making out with each other. At least if you're going off of anime and manga.
No, but he was, like, an aspiring bodybuilder. Like, he was jacked. And, like, I presume that if he were aware of, like, a certain, like, subcultures, he would want to be aware.
I'll give props to Ken Ogata, who's playing Mishima through most of this. He's doing a good job. He's got this very interesting presence. I kind of wish that the movie had gone a little more Brechtian in certain parts and, like, reused the same actors from Mishima's life in the stories, but I get why they didn't do that. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting. I actually thought they were for a second, but then I realized, nope.
It was about highlighting the artifice of the story set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in the scene with the runaway horses, like, I thought that one of the students who was with Isao, I thought it was the same actor as the guy in the Golden Pavilion.
Not using the actors in the same roles helps to emphasize the artifice of the story sections, because they are very artificial, and I'm not using that in a pejorative way. The enhanced artificiality of it made those sections absolutely fascinating and amazing to watch. Because when you have a scene taking place in a room, it's just the room, and then the rest of the frame is just the void.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that does kind of tie in with, like, when they have that scene of Mishima giving a press conference, and they're like, why is there no dialogue in the film? And he gives a very funny, glib answer of, like, you're mad when I use too many words, you're mad when I don't use any. But I think there is something incredibly powerful about the idea of, I will not give you words to twist to an agenda one way or another. You have to interpret it by gesture. And that's also a very Japanese thing with, like, no theater.
And he was also, like, inspired by Noen Kabuki because his grandmother, we will get into that later, but she took him to a lot of performances when he was young.
Oh, God, his grandmother, like, I gotta admit, pretty much the minute...
Oof.
Yeah, like, that whole scene, I'm just like, I'm sorry, you want your grandson to do what?
Yeah, some historical context in the grandmother, like, I have notes on this. She never let him play out in the sun, play any kind of sports, or play with any of the other boys. So I had to look this up, but she was the granddaughter of a daimyo, basically a feudal lord, and she essentially married down to, like, a rich self-made man, and so she had, like, all these aristocratic notions and still carried herself like she was from, well, she's a product of a very old culture, like part of bygone times, which probably, like, probably influenced Mishima in his obsession with death.
Most certainly.
Especially when she called him, like, a delicate plant.
Yeah, that's not gonna cause issues with him at all.
Oh no, it didn't make him have body issues at all, no.
No. Is it weird how she guilted him into not seeing his mother for so long? God. I will say, there are a lot of lines in the screenplay that really punched me in the gut, like, forever watching a world I could not change, forever hoping it would change by itself, like,
Yeah.
Like, I think that's part of what it is, like, obviously, Mishima is not a historical figure I could remotely agree with, but this movie did a good job in not necessarily making you sympathize with what he did, but you could see where this all came from, and it, again, he did kind of end up being kind of a sad, pathetic person, and it is a little tragic.
I think it might kind of be like a horseshoe theory thing.
Yeah.
But if you thought the grandmother was bad, his dad in real life was actually just as bad. He had a taste for military discipline. He felt that the grandmother's child rearing style was too soft, so he would raid his son's room for any evidence of an effeminate interest in literatures, and he would rip apart his son's manuscripts. And some of his more extreme tactics include holding his preteen son up close to the side of a speeding steam locomotive.
I was gonna make an oversimplified punished him severely joke, but
Yeah.
wow.
Oh my god. Yeah, winding up this messed up does make perfect sense, unfortunately.
Okay, I have a note that I made that I think
Yeah.
after hearing what his father was like, this is the appropriate time to put this in. It's actually 2 notes. The first one was at the beginning I said, how do you make a story about a protagonist's self-hatred compelling? And then a little bit later I just typed out, get in the goddamn robot, Mishima.
I am guessing that is an Evangelion reference.
Because sounds like Mishima's father definitely came from the Shinji Gendo school of child rearing. It's an Evangelion thing.
Yep, that's what I thought.
I mean, I guess it's better to write about blowing up a Zen temple than actually blow up a Zen temple.
I mean, yeah, but unfortunately, him writing about all these messed up characters did not stop him from being messed up.
Yeah, no, but it's like different flavors of messed up for each one. So like the Temple of the Golden Pavilion, that's one about 2 disabled men. One is a fuckboy with frog feet who like gets women to sleep with him by playing the sympathy card. And the other one is our protagonist who has a stutter and hasn't been with a woman, and he's much more interested in the beauty of the Golden Pavilion where he is an acolyte. And I wrote down in parentheses, an acolyte, even worse. And then I wrote how the Star Wars fan base reacted to the acolyte.
Damn.
But then it ends with him going to visit a sex worker, and they have sex, and he tells her, tomorrow I'm gonna be famous, and she's like, yeah, right. And then he blows up the pavilion.
Yeah, which, I mean, what an early example of an incel.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's my observation here was I found it fascinating because there's a story that I read many years ago in college literature course called The Destructors by Graham Greene, about a group of teenage kids in post-war Britain that there's this beautiful house that survived the Blitz, and they ultimately decide that they have to destroy it because they hate it. And if you really get into the subtext of the reason why they hate it is it's one beautiful thing, and their lives had no room for beauty. And so the only way that they could react to that beauty is by destroying it. Just as in the Golden Pavilion, the only way that the acolyte ultimately is able to cope with the beauty of the pavilion is by removing it.
Yeah, like, I think a major aspect of this is just when you hold so much self-loathing, eventually it's gonna lead to you destroying others like you want to destroy yourself.
If you can't feel pretty yourself, you have to destroy the things that make you feel ugly.
You know, it's really hard to be all joke about this movie when you guys are getting this existential.
I mean, this isn't a very jokey movie. It's this is a beautifully done film, and it's tackling a subject that would be difficult to do in the best of times, but the fact they go so... There's no word I can think of other than going so artistic with it. It really... Again, it's an autopsy of this man's psychology through his works.
I think the only jokey joke thing you can do is Mishima, Byron is the worst person to base your actions on.
Mary Shelley is spinning in her grave.
God, yeah. Mary Shelley and Mishima probably would not have gotten along if somehow they met.
Oh, absolutely not. He does not have a good relationship with women, and nothing demonstrates that more than the second story that they do, Kyoko's house, which at one point, like, has actual fucking slavery in it, I think.
Oh, it does. It out and out. This is essentially this mob boss lady's just like, okay, so I will erase your mother's death if you basically become my live-in sex slave.
And if you think of Kyoko as a stand-in for his grandmother?
Especially since she's older.
I guess it's possible.
Older, more powerful, has nothing but contempt for his mother. Wants to have him all for herself.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible, yeah. And it's just, like, I remember watching the first scene where they're together, and I'm just like, well, this is fulfilling so many very specific fetishes.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong.
I mean, the scene of the mirror, that was really interesting. And we haven't officially done it yet. I want to shout out Eiko Ishioka, the production designer on this one, because she could take some wackadoo swings in costuming, but everything was always visually striking.
God tier work. Like,
the amount of, like, pink light saturating that scene, and the way that some of those rooms are set up to be, like, in the center of everything, and there's this really fun, weird architecture. It's a beautiful looking movie.
It really is, like, beautifully done, and there was so much thought put into it. It's hard to talk about this movie because you really do have to see it to really get what it's going for. And I think if you love film, you should see it at least once. Like, brace yourself for some heavy-duty self-loathing, suicide, war, all the trigger warnings, to be honest. But it's masterfully done.
I think part of what may be, like, making things difficult for me is that I was always wondering, like, how one balances the very, very Eastern and specifically Japanese, like, philosophy that Mishima espoused throughout his life, and still recognizing that this is an American director with pretty American sensibilities. Even though he had his brother helped write this, as did his brother's wife, Chieko, and so, like, Chieko was also translating, so I'm sure that she put in a lot of effort to, you know, be representing her home culture effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there was also, like, in the opening credits, there was the script researcher. She was also a Japanese woman, so I think that might have helped.
Yeah, this was clearly a collaboration. Like, this is not one of those things where American creators thought they knew what they were doing and didn't consult anybody. This was clearly, Schrader was being very thoughtful about making sure he did this as accurately as he possibly could from his own point of view.
Pity he didn't pass that on to George.
Right? God. Oh God, can you imagine some of the prequel stuff directed by Schrader, given the caliber?
And Eiko doing the visuals?
I would be so down for Eiko Ishioka doing the visuals. I don't think Paul Schrader, at least based on this movie, would have been a very good director for the prequels, because, fuck it, I'm gonna jump to it. The assassination attempt scene at the end, one of the most boring action set pieces I have ever seen.
Well, the thing is, I don't think you're supposed to find it exciting. It's just, like, that's the whole thing. You know, how you said you gotta be so careful not to glorify this kind of person. And Schrader was clearly like, yeah, no, this wasn't some moment of glory. This was an embarrassing attempt by what was a glory hound. Like, he thought he knew what he was doing. He thought he was going to have his nation rise up, or he was going to at least go out a hero. But no, again, sad, pathetic ass man who no one took seriously beyond his disciples.
Yeah, and when he's making his grand speech, half of them can't hear him, and pretty much anyone who does hear him rejects his message.
Yeah, and that part was really good, but, like, the part where like, they're, you know, tying up the general and everything, one, it feels like everybody's, like, taking taking this a little too calmly, and two, I feel like the lack of underscore in that scene is detrimental. Like, I get what you're saying, Jazz, but at the same time, I feel like Philip Glass's score is so uniquely, what's the right word I'm looking for here? Uniquely unsettling that I feel like we missed a huge opportunity there to have some kind of really interesting underscore that, like, you put in some discordant notes of, like, what you think would be a really epic scene in Mishima's eyes, and then, like, no, this is discordant and messy, and the music underscores that.
That is true. And, like, Philip Glass did a really great job with the score. Like, that was, like, one of the first notes I wrote.
Yeah, and that little military beat throughout, like, certain scenes.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people believe that Mishima knew that it was a joke to some extent, because I think ever since, like, he faked tuberculosis and got out of, like, being drafted, he was trying to go out in a way that emulated the old way of life, the samurai, the way of Bushido, and it was all in this one attempt. And he knew that he was not going to come back from that.
Yeah. There's a quote at one point where Mishima, or one of the characters that is there in his stories as his mouthpiece, says, "You must commit suicide at the height of your beauty." Really got the feeling that Mishima knew that everything that he'd done, his final manuscript, which he had just sent, that he had achieved whatever greatness he was capable of achieving, and that the only thing left for him to do was to carry out this operation that was going to be planned precisely and carried out exactly to the minute, to the plan, and it's already past the time that this is supposed to happen when they finally get to where he's supposed to do the speech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, yeah, this is not an easy thing to make jokes about. Like,
yeah.
I mean, well, the only thing I could say, like, my initial impression of Mishima in this, when I was watching, like, the opening blurb, they were talking about, how he was a very prolific, like, he was Japan's most celebrated author. I assumed it would be a straight-up biopic, and for some reason, I was reminded of Tolkien, and then, what do you mean this guy had a private army?
Right?
right?
I mean, I can't imagine J.R.R. Tolkien with a private army. I can't imagine, I don't know, Mark Twain with one.
The fact that he even has a private army, he got permission to do this.
Yeah, I mean, both of the writers you cited are writers that actively had themes that went against Mishima's whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, like, other authors that are held up as, like, pinnacle of our country's literature or something. I don't know. Can you imagine... Actually, I take that back. Louisa May Alcott with her own army would be kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Well, sure.
Sam,
but...
I can think of one, and it's kind of horrifying,
yeah. Oh, no.
but JKR.
Oh!
To a certain extent.
Don't invoke that!
Let's not speak it as the universe. We do not need a bunch of nerds in wizard robes start trying to do a coup d'etat.
It was going to bother me until I said it.
No, that's fair. It was so funny that I'm kind of glad you brought it up. But also, you know what did kind of keep on popping into my head, and I kind of hinted at this in my intro?
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You, like, writing like he was running out of time, has a massive death wish, issues with women. You can't blame me, can you?
No, I can't.
And he's not throwing away his shot to stab himself.
And as a writer, that whole, I wrote this book in 6 months, and this book in 3 months, and this book in 10 months, I'm like, I get it, stop shaming me.
But on the other hand, again, when you realize the kind of mindset that leads him to this, it's like, you know what, maybe I am okay with being in a case of semi-writer's block constantly.
Like, I'd say in terms of complicated Asian historical figures, I say he'd be on par with Gandhi.
Ooh. Interesting. I see where you're going with that, yeah.
We're dealing with heavy stuff.
We're dealing with heavy stuff in a culture that is not our own, and, like, we want to be respectful and also, like, still try to process what the fuck did we just watch?
It's long, it's gay, extremely weird. It's practically tailor-made to be an Ellie movie.
It's not long enough. It's only 2 hours.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's shorter than a Star Wars.
It is absolutely shorter than a Star Wars.
And this is probably with the the cutscene in it, because when we watched the Criterion Collection edition, so there was a scene in the Golden Pavilion where the acolyte is talking to his teacher. That's in the original film that was cut out entirely.
Oh, was it?
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. The actor who plays the teacher is uncredited.
Huh. Yeah, because it feels like it's such an essential little scene. I mean, it's very short, but it feels kind of essential to kind of for the build-up of everything.
If it helps lighten the mood, I will say that the scene with the Master was how I finally found out that Master Roshi's name in Dragon Ball Z was a pun.
Master. Freaking Moon.
Uh-huh.
Fucking Moon indeed. But I will say, when I realized that the mob boss was a lady, I couldn't help but think of that one College Humor sketch about the female serial killer.
Yeah. Women's rights, women's wrongs.
Exactly. It's almost a cliche at this point. And you just know that there is a certain subsect of fanfiction writers that are just like, wait a minute, one of my favorite tropes existed how long now? Although she's no One Direction, I guess.
Oh, God. I mean, that scene where, what's his name? Osamu is sitting around with his friends, and they're talking like, oh, it's like I'm back in college again. Yay.
Yeah, sitting at that little izakaya card, and, like, with all the people around him, there's, like, in that little void, it's almost like a lot of, those kind of scenes. It feels, like, really isolated.
Some of those conversations, my first thought was, like, the picture of Dorian Gray, actually, because it's very similar to the conversation he was having
with the painter.
Well, not even just the painter, because Basil was not really the corrupting influence. Fucking Henry was the corrupting influence, was going on
and the bodybuilder in the scene.
My point exactly. Like, it's just going on and on about how you have the only two things worth having, looks and youth, and of course that gives Dorian the anxiety attack enough to sell his soul to the painting. So that's kind of what I was thinking of up until the talk about how you have to kill yourself at the height of your beauty. I was just like, well, that was different. Some men will literally write dozens upon dozens of stories about the nature of beauty and self-destruction and then try to lead a fascist coup rather than go to therapy.
Some men think that is therapy.
But you also know what the black and white shots of Mishima in his uniform remind me of? The El Conde film from 2023. That also involves, like, a coup d'etat by a fascist in the 70s.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that I saw parallels to current events in this movie. Yeah. It's just like, God damn it, we're really just doomed to constantly be doing this.
I'm sorry, I would like to get off this train of the darkest and the dumbest timeline.
Pretty please?
Yeah, if the internet had been around in Mishima's day, he would have been the leading figure in the manosphere of his time. I name-dropped Andrew Tate earlier for a very, very specific reason. In a lot of ways, the similarities are so glaring. Except I don't think Andrew Tate has ever actually read a book.
Do you think Mishima would have been beefing with Greta Thunberg?
Possibly.
Or he probably thinking, no, Western girl, no. He just focused on Japan itself.
That is true.
He hated the West, but he was obsessed with wanting the West to validate him.
Yeah, because we had that scene of him saying that he hasn't even been translated, like, abroad. Like, he only had one novel translated in English in that scene. And he was, even though, like, his novels had been translated to other language, he was obsessed with being translated in English.
Like, that scene really does illustrate, it's just like, dude, you're doing fantastic. Why are you still this bummed out? It's like, it's really so sad because he was clearly beloved. He was successful. And still he wasn't happy because he still had to live with the person he hated the most himself.
It didn't fill the emptiness, but maybe if there's more of it, that finally will. And then you get more, and you're still empty. And maybe if I get more, oh shit, I'm still empty, ad infinitum.
And here's a PSA. If you are feeling that, and you happen to be a billionaire, get rid of your money.
Invest it back into the world. Like, raise a living wage while you're at it.
Like, you have enough money to end hunger and the housing crisis and, like, fix everything, and, you know, fuck you. Fuck you, billionaires.
Yeah, like, literally any one of you could technically be a superhero if you so chose, and then you choose not to.
Mm-hmm. Insert you say millionaire like it's a good thing here.
Yep. God. Should we talk about the Runaway Horses? Because I think that's the only book we haven't really captured at this point.
Yeah, that was the one that I saw the most Star Wars in, to be honest. Just in some of the ways some of the scenes were staged, even though this predates the prequels by like 20
George
years.
is sitting in the corner taking
especially
notes.
with the kendo,
He is sitting in the corner taking notes, pointing and going, I want that in my movie.
Hey, Schrader, you mind if I copy your homework? Fine, but don't make it obvious.
I won't make it obvious. We'll just make it rhyme.
Like, like, there are just some scenes where it's just, like, I could see the side-by-side comparison to Anakin in some of the shots in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, which, of course, I recently rewatched. Like, side-by-side in my brain.
Yeah, honestly, this just reinforces that people just didn't get Anakin in the 2000s. They weren't ready for him. They weren't culturally in a place to receive him.
No, that is true. Oh, if the prequels came out now,
well, we'd have an entirely different set of problems on our hands.
Yeah.
like, it'd still be hell, but I do get the sense that at least from a certain subsect of the internet, he would have been much better received. He'd be whoopified even more.
Better direction wouldn't have hurt.
Well, of course.
Yeah. So, circling back to the Runaway Horses, this guy is like a super good kendo student, and so he thinks that means he and his friends should be able to overthrow the government and restore a pure form of Japan.
Yeah, I kind of flinched at the
again.
use of purity, because, purity is not necessarily a good thing in this case. Because it goes back to, like, old feudal ideals and practices, and it's just like a regression instead of actually moving forward.
It's very fascist.
There's always that thing where you want to stand up and be like, hey, remember what the Empire of Japan was doing? Remember why, like, we stopped doing this shit? Guys!
But again, it really is their version of Make Japan Great Again, unfortunately.
Sadly, yes.
I don't like it any more than you do.
I just, oh god, I don't even know. I'm so tired.
I know. But, I mean, I guess in a weird, tragic way, it's nice to know it's not just us.
I mean, I would love it if the current political party in power could be reduced down to an old man yells at cloud kind of thing. Unfortunately, that is not the reality we're in. That's another thing about this movie. It is kind of like an extended old man yells at cloud thing. Am I wrong?
And he wasn't even that old.
You're not
He was
wrong.
45 when he did
Mentally.
this.
Not not chronologically, but mentally very much older than his actual age.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you can have old man yells at cloud energy even if you are not physically old man.
Oh, for sure. And, you know, it's funny because there's this creator who does, like, a lot of historical stuff who literally posted a video about how fascism is just the political ideology of a petulant child, basically. So this movie did very much emphasize that in a weird way because, like, yes, it's old man yells at cloud, but it's also just this weirdly childish sentiment that it's like, no, I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and I will never take accountability because I'm always right, goddammit.
He essentially
And
became
it's
his
always-
grandmother.
It's always someone else's fault.
Yep.
I hate myself because I don't live in the kind of world where I could be a glorious warrior. It's like, no, dude, this is on you. You need to work on yourself, and not just in the bodybuilding sense. You need to actually deal with your feelings.
I hate myself because I don't live in a time period that appreciates what I have to offer, because that time period has never existed.
Yeah, that too.
There's, I think what this movie's statement could be is that there is a difference between people who long for a world that doesn't exist because it did exist for them at some point, and people who long for a world that doesn't exist because it has never existed.
Yeah.
He's definitely the latter. And there is a poem that I forget exactly when I first read it. Miniver Cheevy by Edward Arlington Robinson. I'm just going to read the first part of it, but I recommend that anybody who hasn't read it or hasn't read it in a while just find it. It's online. The first line is, Miniver Cheevy, child of scorn, grew lean while he assailed the seasons. He wept that he was ever born, and he had reasons. Is that not Mishima right there?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think it's a lot of us. Like, it's almost a cliche at this point that a bunch of us in our current generation like to point out, hey, none of us asked to be here.
What was the show or the book or something that was like, birth is a curse and existence? Oh, The Good Place. The Good Place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. Birth is a curse and existence is a prison. But don't think about that. Don't be sad, you guys.
God, now I'm just imagining Mishima in The Good Place.
I'm not sure that would be a thing,
sure.
because he believed in Shintoism,
Well,
so...
yeah, but I mean, the whole premise of The Good Place is that every religion was like a little bit right, and I don't know.
That's what a lot of those kinds of media do now when they're tackling the afterlife. It's like, we don't really want to completely dismiss any worldview or religion, so fuck it, you're all kind of right.
Not a girl, not a robot, not a specific religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think part of the reason why the Forever Watching a World line does hit so hard is I think we've all kind of felt that at some point. And the sad thing is, like, that's perfectly normal to feel like as a child, but...
But when it carries into adulthood, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, man. This movie does emotions.
That it do.
I'm glad that you bring that up, Jazz, because I think it is time for me to ask, is the Force with it?
Absolutely.
Well, according to Paul Schrader, Mishima is too much of a scandal, so when Mishima died, people said, give us 15 years and we'll tell you what we think about him. But it's been more than 15 years now. We still don't know what to say. Mishima has become a non-subject. So, I'll say, much like its subject, the Force is very complicated.
Come on, Shami. Don't do this to me. Don't Grey Jedi me.
I still have not processed how I felt about this film.
That's super fair.
Yeah, because I literally watched it in one sitting at first, felt discombobulated, and then I thought, okay, maybe I'll watch chapter by chapter. It still does not make sense to me feelings-wise. You know, I have alexithymia.
No, that's super fair. Like, for me, this is kind of a masterpiece, and the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I know damn well there's no way I would always be in the mood for something like this because of how heavy it is and how much it kind of makes me want to stare at a wall and think about how this kind of bullshit keeps happening, but also I get where Mishima is coming from to a certain degree, and like I do love it when I can see where the worst person in the world is coming from. Just because, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I try really hard to be as empathetic as possible. But no, this is a masterfully done film. If anything we've said sparks any kind of interest in you, dear listeners, please give it a try at least once in your lives. It'll at the very least make you think.
It is beautiful and horrifying and painful and moving, and the most tragic thing about it is how much more relevant it is now, 40 years after its original release. The Force is absolutely with this one, in my estimation.
Okay, I'm So I'm saying Force is not with it, mainly because this is another movie that is going on the I recognize this movie is brilliant, I never want to watch it again kind of thing.
And I understand that
Valid.
completely. Like, this is definitely not your flavor of delicious cake.
Mm-hmm. It's for people with heavy taste.
I mean, that's one way to put it.
I mean, I don't know, like, do I have heavy taste? Because, like, most of my comfort movies are Disney movies, guys.
I could not tell you, honestly. This is, I think, a movie we're just gonna have to, like, sit with for a very, very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe that's what a lot of good art does, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily easily digestible, and that's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. And there's a line from a song that I love that Shami's reaction and talking about how you're still having to process this brought to mind. It's, I don't know what he meant to me, I just know he affected me. An effect not unlike his art, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a Sondheim thing?
No, it's a song by Dar Williams called Mark Rothko Song. It was released 1992, I think. Absolutely beautiful.
Okay, it felt a little bit Sondheim-y there, but then again, Sondheim is one of the things that rots my brain in addition to Star Wars.
I can see the connection, now that you point it out.
Okay.
It does have very much that sort of spirit.
All right, well,
Exactly.
who has pluggables?
I am the host of In Each Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. By the time this comes out, we'll be finally ending season 2 with our anniversary special soon. And please check me out on all the socials at Faye Riviera. We'll be getting back on track with In Each Retelling as we get along.
You got a minute and a half!
I'm Snakebit Cat on most of the socials, and departing from my usual formula of recommending something that, in the Amazon, if you like this, check this out away. If you haven't seen this movie, please watch it. You don't let us tell you what this movie is or could be to you. Please find out for yourself.
Very true.
So I'm going to be recommending something in Grady's place. If you're wanting to see this from the perspective of a Japanese filmmaker, there's a film called 1125, The Day Mishima Chose His Own Fate by Koji Wakamatsu. It's focused specifically on the coup d'etat in 1970. It also uses a lot of fragmented scene to explore what we now know as the Mishima incident. It's literally a Wikipedia page.
Huh.
And you can find me on the online muse on Tumblr. I make all the graphics for both this podcast and for our sister podcast, In Each Retelling. If you like my work and want to come hit me up, just do it.
And in the spirit of Star Wars, to be there for the people who need us, this episode's mutual fund spotlight goes to the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance. This organization is all about building affinity and community and representation for LGBTQAANHPI, working at the local and grassroots level to empower the fastest growing community in the LGBTQ plus America. The link can be found in the description for this podcast, as well as on my various socials under my handle, Demisem. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls, one beat synth pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period, the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, and share with your friends to boost our visibility, and consider joining our Patreon.
And with that, we have reached the end of the episode, specifically the end of Grady's 10th episode. Congratulations, Grady. You may now turn in your rat tail. You have become a knight of the Order of 6 Degrees of Star Wars.
Thank you very much.
And as such, you now have one opportunity to pick the degree that we next cover. You will pick the number, but not the movie. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to save it for later?
Let's do degree 3.
Degree 3? Turning red!
Yes!
Nice.
Oh my god.
We'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful, and may the Force be with you.